I'm sure a lot of you may be asking what this new email story is about and why in the world the FBI would decide to jump into an election with no evidence of any wrongdoing with just days to go.
Oh, yeah, you didn't think we were going to get to that, did you? You have returned to the special edition of America Talks Live. Ed Berliner along with Miranda Kahn as we plunge headfirst into the fray of Election Day 2016, seeking only to survive it all and make sense of it in the coming days.
We've got quite a task ahead of us.
It's going to be the important thing. Let's all just survive together. History will make sense of what happens here, which is why we welcome to America Votes 2016 New York Times bestselling author, presidential historian, author of Last Act, The Final Years and Emerging Legacy of Ronald Reagan. Our good friend Craig Shirley joins us. Craig, pleasure to see you again. History is in the making. Let's talk about it right here, but with regards to the FBI, in your opinion, how much effect did this really have? And is history going to look back on this election as the James Comey forged election?
Well, you know, Ed, that's an interesting point. It remains to be seen. You know, certainly in the past, government has used battles, wars, and FBI law to affect the outcomes of presidential elections. As a matter of fact, is that Republicans actually scored seats in 1942, 1 year into World War II, because they're dissatisfied with FDR's and the Democrats' progress on World War II. So Republicans actually picked up House seats and Senate seats. We've had law enforcement abuses before. Is that in 1976, the Watergate special prosecutor was still in business, even though Nixon had resigned 2 years earlier. And they were constantly leaking against Gerald Ford as he was trying to mount a comeback to defeat Governor Carter in the fall election. As a matter of fact, the Washington Post thought it was very important to report that Betty Ford's checks to her hairdresser were always for round amounts. And this information they got, of course, from the Watergate special prosecutor. I doubt the pillars of government tremored over that information, but the Washington Post thought it was very important. Lawrence Walsh abused power by re-indicting Caspar Weinberger the weekend before the 1992 election, only to unre-indict him 1 month later. So we've seen abuses of government through long honored tradition in the Republic, and I think this too is going to be seen that way. Not the exoneration, but the re-exoneration. I think obviously pressure was put on Comey by Obama and by Loretta Lynch. And it's a black day, and it's a black time for the FBI.
All right, long-honored tradition in politics. You're right about that. Let's get another take on this. We're also joined by the former assistant to President George W. Bush and the founder of Run Switch Public Relations. Scott Jennings joins us on America Talks Live. Scott, thanks for being here, and let's get right to what we just talked about with Craig, and that is the FBI, the emails, James Comey, and the fact that this has so turned this election in the last couple of weeks. Do you see this then as the election that history will look at and say, that was the turning point, that was the moment, or is that just really caterwauling in the canyon? Okay, we have no audio there. We're going to go ahead and fix that, and we will come back to him in a moment. Let's talk about some of the issues here with Craig.
Right. Craig, I want to talk about some of the other issues that have happened during this election cycle, specifically talking about some of the controversies that have been surrounding Hillary Clinton. Of course, that infamous moment when she said this about Donald Trump's supporters. Who could forget this?
To just be grossly generalistic, you could put half of Trump's supporters into what I call the basket of deplorables. Right? The racist, sexist, homophobic, xenophobic, Islamophobic, you name it.
Craig, how damaging was this to her campaign?
Miranda, it reinforced every negative perception everybody's ever had about Hillary Clinton. She's an elitist, that she hates a certain class of people. This is not presidential. Washington, in his farewell address, urged unity. Lincoln said, let us bind up the nation's wounds. Reagan made open appeals to Democrats and independents to join his community of shared values. Every president down through the ages has made some type of appeal for unity among the American people. Only Hillary Clinton, she described her comments as gross, and I would agree with her for once, is that her comments are gross. They're divisive, and they're quite frankly despicable and anti-intellectual. I found that the common people so-called, is in her eyes, have a lot more common sense than the so-called sophisticates and intellectuals who support her election.
All right, Craig, let's go ahead and talk about Donald Trump for a moment here, because he certainly has not been without his own moments of infamy. For instance, caught on tape talking about women more than a decade ago. This, of course, another turning point in the election. Here it goes.
I'm gonna use some Tic Tacs just in case I start kissing her. You know, I'm automatically attracted to beautiful. I just start kissing them.
Let's then take a couple of words that you mentioned here, Craig, because we've seen both candidates make these very foolish verbal mistakes. You mentioned the words unifying and divisive. Is it not fair to say that Donald Trump has also been very divisive in the comments that have come out of his own mouth? And also, when you talk about unifying, he has not, in many times and in many ways, done what he could do to unify the country as a presidential candidate.
Yeah, no, absolutely. This is a campaign for the ages, but probably the dark ages. But don't forget too, he said that 10 years ago. Hopefully, Donald Trump changed at least a little bit in the course of this election. But there's no doubt is that he is equally guilty as is Hillary of being divisive and not trying to draw the American people together. Even in his acceptance speech at the Republican convention, I found really deplorable, because even then he was still calling for division among Republicans, and that's the one time when a presidential party or when a party needs to be unified is at their national convention, because all the world is watching. You know, they're on stage, and so look, is that both candidates? Let's just judge them both to be guilty of not meeting the standards of the greater men of the American presidency.
As a politician, who do you think did a better job campaigning throughout this election cycle? Who do you think evolved, who stepped up, who learned from past lessons, previous mistakes, Craig?
You know, Miranda, that's a great question, you know, because we've all seen presidential candidates actually grow and mature. You know, Freud said the characters develop in the first 18 months. I happen to disagree with that. I think people are always capable of becoming better, more steeped in character and intelligence. And you could see John Kennedy in 1960 grow and develop as a candidate. You could see Ronald Reagan, even at age 69, after he became the nominee, the realization that he might be the leader of the free world really had an effect on him in a positive sort of way. I think that most men who seek the presidency, some point during the campaign, they realize is that with the stakes that are involved is that they hold in their hand the future of not just millions of Americans, but billions of their fellow citizens of the globe. But we've seen neither of that from either of these presidential candidates. As far as I can see, them grow in this course of the campaign and becoming steeped in the history and the dignity and majesty of the Oval Office.
Got about 2 minutes left here. Let's look forward a little bit here, if you will, Craig, because we have an election cycle here that has been marked by insults, anger, innuendo, rumor, sniping back and forth. We haven't really heard a tremendous, check, you got to check every box here. We haven't really heard a lot about things like, for instance, Donald Trump's tax returns. It seems to have just gone away. It's gone, no big deal. His people don't care. Hillary Clinton emails, doesn't care. Her people just look right past it. Are we looking at a reshaping of American presidential politics from here on out, where all it's going to take is dig in? Don't tell people what you're going to do for them. Tell them why the other guy or the other gal is the worst possible thing in the history of life, and don't worry about any of the rest, because it doesn't make any difference to the voters.
You know, Ed, you know, Shakespeare was famous for writing, first let's kill all the lawyers. I would suspect that in the future he might want to rephrase that. If Shakespeare lived in the 21st century, he might write, first let's kill all the consultants. The consultant class has led to this wreck and ruin of American politics. Is that, yeah, we don't focus on the one thing, but because they're very good with the bait and switch. Don't look over here. Pay no attention to these droids. They're not the droids you're looking for. Look over here. They're very good with the bait and switch, but they're just not very good with policy or substance or issues or anything that's what we really care about.
But do the American people care about it, though, Craig? That's my point.
Yes, yeah, I absolutely. I mean, I put, all American presidents and real, everybody puts great trust in the wisdom of the American people. And that's why the framers put the Article 1 was the House of Representatives, not the Senate, not the presidency, because they believe in the goodness and wisdom of the American people. It's just the consultants don't. The consultants are constantly running down politics and bringing politicians down to a juvenile level. When, as a matter of fact, the American people I think, are hungering and thirsting for good intellectual discourse and good intellectual exercise.
There you
and good,
go.
Okay.
There you go. And that's what I think, hopefully, after this election, we will move
hoping
forward
for
and
that.
we
I
will
know
look
you
to
are.
good political discourse. We will change what has happened here. Craig, remain in your chair. We're going to break and return for more with you. We'll be joined also from inside the Beltway, the Beltway, or the Beltway, either one.
Either one, it works.
It's close enough, really, if you look at the exit sign. That's what
Yeah.
it says. Inside the Beltway, the man who knows where all the snake oil is buried in the swamp. Our own John Gizzi is here. He's got to give us the insight on what's happening. All night, we will be right here to tell you what is happening when the polls close and the new president is named. Right here on Newsmax and America Talks Live. Stay with us.